I am absolutely thrilled to welcome Diandra Denier Fields to the podcast today. Diandra, or rather Dr. Fields, is a postdoctoral researcher in the field of lifestyle, diet, and dementia. And she is a two times cancer survivor and thriver, and the founder and creator of Cancer Free Haven, which is the course and support that she wished was available to her when she was first diagnosed with breast cancer. And more importantly than any of that, Deandra is also my business bestie. We've known each other now for about 2 years, and she keeps me on the straight and narrow. She's my accountability buddy. She's my motivation. She's my sometimes, Alison, you need a bit of a kick up the arse. And she is a real source of inspiration and light to me as well. So thank you so much, Deandra, for coming on the podcast today. I am delighted and so excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you so much for having me, Allison. It's been a joy to work with you for the past 2 years, and I hope that some of our insights are helpful to your audience on their business journeys as well.
Oh, they definitely will be. I know this already. So, today we're going to be talking about the art of weaving your personal story into your business so that you can better communicate your message, you can better attract the perfect customer, and better communicate your value as well. And Deandra is perfect. And when it comes to talking about this topic, because she has created this course and this business, which is almost an extension of her in service of helping other women who have gone through a similar challenge. And I feel like it would be remiss of me if I did not start off this podcast, which is all about weaving your story into your business, with starting off with the story about you, Deandra. So, can you tell us, why did you create Cancer Free Haven and what is your mission behind it?
Yes, so that's a wonderful introduction, Allison. So, Cancer-Free Haven, it's something that's kind of been in the back of my mind, unnamed for years. So, I had thyroid cancer at 23, and I always kind of knew that, like, I was working in the biotech field, I was working in late stage cancer diagnostics, I was helping cancer survivors, but I wasn't directly connecting with them. So from an early time, I knew that that's what I wanted to do, at least long term. But when I was diagnosed a decade after my first diagnosis in 2012, I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. And it's a hormone positive, and it's becoming, unfortunately, more common in young women. So it typically used to be a 65 and older type of cancer, but it's now more frequently found in young women. And so this was kind of that wake up call that I got to experience cancer again a second time. And like the first time, there was no one in my immediate community who was young and living with cancer. And so I saw that as a need. This is a need. We need to connect because there are very wonderful Facebook groups and online groups that are for young men and women with different types of cancers. But there's not a lot of direct support, as in, what are the things that are specific to my age group? So when you're looking at someone who's 65 and they have breast cancer, they're not going to be having more children. So the concerns of fertility for them, they don't have them. They're non-existent. But when you're in your mid 30s or even mid 20s, it's a very pertinent topic. And so as I went through advocating for myself and my own cancer journey and choosing option A, B, C, and then coming up with my own combination of option D, it it really showed me that these are the kind of things that would be very helpful to another survivor. So I had looked online and I had not found things like that. I found books that were very helpful, books on inspiration, on radical hope, on radical remission. Those were two books that I had read during my cancer diagnosis, and they really showed me that cancer is not a death sentence. And so we shouldn't treat it as such. It's urgent, yes, but it doesn't mean the end. And so when I got through the thick of my treatment, I realized it's time to stand up and it's time to bring my knowledge that I have from the cancer field, from the genetic side, from personally living it and being able to interpret research articles and say, I'm bringing this to my oncologist. So if I do that for me, I did that for my mom too. Why can't I do that for someone else who maybe doesn't have the experience or the background to be able to understand it? And so that's where my course Thrive from the Start came from. I wanted to have a resource that if you knew nothing going into a new diagnosis, what would you need to know? What are the highlights? And I broke it down by from your initial diagnosis through types of treatment that you have options for, never pressuring anyone to choose one or the other, just finding what's right for you and knowing what questions to ask. I think that's the most empowering thing is just not feeling like you're on the cancer conveyor belt. So the first time I went through cancer, I felt like I would chop off my left arm if it would cure my thyroid cancer, even though like completely unrelated, but it's just that desperation that you get. And the second half of my course that I'm working on right now and finishing up is all about the life like after cancer. And once you've gone through all the hard decisions, how do you live with what is remaining? So I think that's been something that we can talk about a little bit later on, but it's been an evolution to go from your initial to how are we processing these motions and how do we move forward?
Wow. Just wow. That is such a beautiful mission, and I can see how there's so much of your heart, your soul, your background, your like career and skills that have all gone into this to create this incredible course. I've been lucky enough to see it, and it is like you say, in like a brilliant mix of science, your story, heart, information in that very kind of non-judgmental, non-pushy way. And also that explains some really quite complex stuff as well. You do a really good job of demystifying some of the science and using nice analogies. So that was a beautiful story to hear and to receive. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, why should other business owners care about incorporating their story into their business? I can see how, with this, like, this is your heart and soul, and that might be maybe different for other people who have different businesses. So, if we're thinking about someone where there might be something which is very interlinked, as in, like yourself and Thrive from the Start, versus someone who maybe doesn't have such a strong personal story, but they're still really passionate about the work that they do, like a website developer, for example. Why should all business owners care about incorporating their story?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And I did have to think about that for a little bit before we got on today. Because initially I was like, oh, well, if you didn't live it, then how can you tell that story? But then I really thought about the aspect of you being you and that amongst small businesses, if you're a big corporation, it's different. But for a small business, people are buying from people. So even if you necessarily didn't go through this life crisis that brought you to be a web developer, what were the things along your journey? Maybe you saw a friend or a family member who was trying to start a business and was really struggling, right? And they didn't have this presence, and you did it pro bono to help them. I think that's the kind of story that you can interweave because that's what gives you the passion that it makes you different and that I think we shouldn't shy away from our differences. A lot of times we try to be, in the pack, right? But really, what I've realized over my many years of attempting different business ventures is it's what makes you different that makes you stand out. So we should just embrace that If you're a web developer and your niche is bakeries and you just love the pictures of baked goods and it makes you smile and you know how to write those words to get people to just drool all over the web page, like then you embrace that. Like that's a part of your story. So I think it's rather than just early on, we want to just appease everyone, right? So I did some nutrition coaching and I had a few amazing clients that were the exact ideal person I wanted to work with. And then there was one or two that slipped in that just were not willing to make any of the changes that I would have needed them to make. And so I tried to make myself fit them, but I realized that it wasn't benefiting them because it wasn't what they needed. And it wasn't benefiting me because I was having to change myself. So it's almost better to like let those clients go. And what I've done since then is I've started collaborations. So I found someone who does nutrition coaching and she focuses on weight loss, and that's something I will not do. So I send people to her. I say, I don't do that, but actually, I know a great person that could help you with this. And then I can send them over to her page. And she doesn't do anything with early stage cancer survivors. So if you're in that first 2 years between diagnosis and treatment, she won't focus on those clients. So she can send them to me. So I think my advice is it's okay to set boundaries. And if you do, then find someone who fills that need that you have chosen to step out of so that you can work together and really lift each other up.
Oh, I love that. There's so many gems there. I feel like that people buy from people. Yes, so true. Embracing your weirdness and made me smile when you're using the bakery example.
Yeah.
And what was the other thing? The collaboration as well, and being brave enough to let go of clients maybe who are not the right fit for you
Mhm.
and actually shoehorning them, directing them, signposting them, that's the word,
Mhm.
to someone else. And they might also do the same to you. So there are loads of really useful ideas and tips there. And I wonder what else might be something that people need to consider when trying to incorporate their story. And I'm thinking maybe more about like the way that they tell their story or add in some of those things.
Mhm. Yeah, so there's a place for everything, right? There's a time and place in which you should tell your story. So, as I've been going through social media and I've had other conversations with other entrepreneurs, like in my area of cancer support, it's really interesting to see how different people come at it. So, really depends on your product. Like, if your product is a scarf, then yeah, you want to focus on that scarf for 90% of the time that you're posting on it. But then maybe that other 10% is you, is why do I create? And kind of giving a refresher. So I don't know if you've seen before, but I'll see like every couple months, like there will be like a get to know me post that people will use. And I really like that because it's yes, there's the brand. Yes, there's the product, but you're going to be having new people come and find you at all different times of the year. So just saying a friendly hello and who you are and what you do, it really does help people to connect because we can't do the scale of the big companies, but what we can do is be that person. So one thing I just recently changed, and Allison kind of motivated me to make this change, was I am the only business owner, right? I am Cancer Free Haven. There is no one else. I would love to expand in the future, but I realize that coming from a scientific background, we talk about we a lot. So the we is me, is my boss, is people that fund my projects. But then when I'm talking about my solo entrepreneur gig, it's really just me. So then I changed every context, at least on my website, and I'm in the progress of doing it in my course as well. But when I say we, I switch it to I. I am here to support you. I have created this for you. And it just really makes that personal connection. So I think maybe you don't, put your story out everywhere, but it's sprinkling it in. And if there's something in your business that is, hey, I want to give a donation this month to support this charity. Well, then why did you choose that charity? How is it important to you? And what good do you think it's doing overall? I know we're coming up on holiday giving season, so that may be an opportunity for your customers to get to know you and your purpose.
That's a really good idea. And actually, you just expanded the way that I thought about telling your story because I had quite like a narrow view, I think, in terms of, well, this is why I started the business because X, Y, Z. But what you just said there was like, there might be another reason or another cause that you feel passionate about, and just tell your story about why you feel passionate about them. Tell
Mhm.
stories about your life
Mhm.
rather than, your story.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's evolved over time. So, one of the books that I read throughout my journey of learning about coaching and starting a business was Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. And you hear that and you're like, okay, story and brand, like, okay, it's about you, but actually his is a little different take on it, and it's putting your client as the hero. So, like in the Karate Kid, you are Mr. Miyagi, you are the expert, the trainer, but your client is the Karate Kid who is has this thing that they need to learn, this thing that they need to solve, this problem. And you are the one that is there gently coaching them in the right direction or filling that need. So if you're a web designer, then you're helping this other business owner to help their product shine. So that's what you're doing and you're supporting them in that way. So yeah, I think that even if you don't have a direct story, talking about what your customer is experiencing can be another way to really get in touch with that. And I know Allison and I have talked about how it's a good idea to sometimes frame your ideal customer as you a couple years ago, because then you know yourself inside and out and you know the struggles you went through. So maybe even looking at it in that aspect of what can I do to help my previous self? What did I do? How did I get to where I am today? That can really help, especially in coaching and e-learning courses.
Two great perspectives in order to see the world. And can I have a little confession to you, Deandra?
Mhm.
Because I don't know if this will resonate with you or with other people who are listening to the podcast, but sometimes I feel like I go too much into my story because my background is blogging. I find it hard to moderate between sharing and maybe
Mhm.
sometimes putting myself as the hero as
Mhm.
opposed to that focus on my client, but still incorporating elements of what's happening in my experience. Does
Mhm.
does that make sense? Do you resonate with that at all?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I resonate with that too. A lot of Cancer-Free Haven on my Instagram is my cancer journey, and I'll look back through and I see phases in which it's mostly about what I'm going through. And then other phases where it's more oriented towards the client. So I think it really depends on the season that you're in. Like if you're going through big transformations, you hiding that is not really doing a service to your clients, right? But one spin that I've heard that you could potentially try for this is putting your you part more in the stories so that it's people who are seeing you on a regular basis. Those are the ones that are more invested and they probably want to hear about what your day to day is. But then keeping your posts and your reels more towards the business, more towards the client. So I think it also depends on like where you're at. Like right now, I'm not um, doing so much one-on-one work, right? So I'm doing the course. I'm actively still going through being a cancer thriver. And so if I hide that, it's doing a disservice. It makes it seem like I'm completely beyond this, and I'm not really. And I think that goes to my advantage that a lot of other cancer brands, people are like 5, 10 years out. I know one of my collaborators, she's about 17 or 18 years out. So she is more in the client focused phase because she has been out of it for so long and she has so much more experience with helping others versus me in the earlier stages. It is very much like what my choices were and speaking like one on one with individuals. So, yeah, I think you just need to kind of read where you're at with your business. And if you don't have a lot of clients, then it's going to be more you centered because you are your number one client, right? You're coaching yourself all the time. So I think you can kind of just balance that, like how many people do you help at a time and just kind of do proportionally there for that.
Hmm. I think the thing that's really coming through from our conversation is this intentionality. You used like the word sprinkle in 90/10, add in elements, and
Mhm.
it's the thing about being intentional and that there are so many aspects of yourself and your personality and your story that you can weave in. It's just
Mhm.
thinking through maybe a little bit and having some mindfulness around that. Hmm. And so, Deandra, you've already said so many wonderful, useful things for our listeners today on the podcast. But what is one thing that someone who is inspired by our conversation could do to improve their storytelling today?
Awesome. So I'm going to give a tip that I was hesitant on at first, but have learned to enjoy and utilize over time. And that is using the AI tools that we have, using ChatGPT, whatever service like that that you have to your advantage. Because for me, I've been very much a scientist, right? I have data, I am looking at things, and I'm giving you all the evidence. But what I've found is that using an AI tool allows me to add more compassion into my writing. So it's not just sterile. And it's helped me actually in my own writing to be more open as well. So at first it was me saying, hey, I want to make a post about I had blood work and these are the results. And then it's more like working with it and saying, but I want this to be personal. I want this to connect to my audience. You can tell it who your audience is. So you're a web developer and your audience is young business owners who like to bake pastries out of their house. So you can feed in who your ideal client is and how you connect with them. And I think that is just a great way to really integrate your story and to really meet your audience where they are in a way that you by yourself may not actually achieve that in the way that you want to.
I am so for AI. Can we just take a little moment to appreciate how great ChatGPT is? And by the way, I absolutely love that you use a machine to help you like come across more compassionately. Like
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny because like I didn't think it would help with that. I figured it would be very sterile, but I had utilized like conversations and feedback that I've had from other survivors and really pulling in like what are the struggles. And so you can upload like a document that says like these are the struggles, these are the feelings that we're addressing. And yeah, it's kind of like, one question after the other. Here's a question, here's the answer, here's my ideal client. And once you have that in there, then as you make posts or you make other content, you can have it like basically use that filter and say, this is how I want to come across. So maybe other people are very empathetic and very compassionate, but are missing like the data side of things. And for them, they could have, I want this to sound more, research, more scientific. And yes, you have to double and triple check these services because sometimes they give you false information, but it definitely starts to get the ball rolling for you, I think. And it's like having a personal assistant without having to, schedule meetings and everything like that. Like it's just there when you need it. So I really, really think it's a great tool, and it always needs to come from your heart. But once you put that into it, feel free to edit and revise and revise and revise, right? Till you get what you're happy with.
So true. And I think for some business owners who might feel like, oh, it's taken away my like personal aspect or whatever, I just totally disagree because I think like technology can help you. I'm not a designer. I use Canva, which is a
Yeah.
lot of pre-made stuff to help me out to better communicate what I am good at, my
Mhm.
skill. And sometimes I think, we think we have to be good at everything. No, take the help and just make sure that, like you said, it still comes from your heart. It's still a part of you. And don't be shy to take the help when you need it.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, I love Canva too. It's great because you can use as much help or as little help as you want. I basically use it as PowerPoint for the most point. Like I I make my own graphics and stuff a lot of the time. So I'm not needing a whole lot, but it's a canvas. So yeah, I think that's a great tool too. And if you love copywriting and that's your thing, then maybe you use AI to help you generate ideas for your webpage, right? So, like, what kind of layouts could I use? What kind of images should I include? So, I say take wherever your strength is, and then you focus on that. But then, wherever you're needing more support, that's where you really use those tools.
That is a fabulous top tip.
Thank you.
You, Deandra. So, where can people find out more about you if they wanted to use your course, share it with a friend, share it with someone who might be going through something similar at the moment or has gone through breast cancer in the past? Because it is for people who are actively going through it and also people who have been through it. So, give us all your socials, all the ways to connect with you, please.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm on Instagram at cancer.free.haven. And also my website is cancerfreehaven.com. And so I have a couple different freebies. One of them is the circles of control. And it's all about when you're in that mindset of anxiety and just really feeling lost, how do you put the things that are happening in your life into these three different circles to really focus on what you can do actionably right now, and then helping you to let go of the things that you really can't influence at all. So that is one of my favorite freebies, and it leads right into my course as well. So I have one lesson in the mental health module, the cultivating mindfulness, that is all going through that in detail. So if you like the freebie and you got a lot from that, then you can definitely check out the Thrive from the Start course from there.
Amazing. And I'll put all the details in the show notes as well, so you have them there. Thank
Wonderful.
you so much, Deandra. It has been incredible talking to you. It's been so inspiring. And I know that our listeners have got so much from this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Allison. It's been wonderful as always.